Ali Nazary, he is the head of foreign relations for the National Resistance Front of Afghanistan. Not a lot of coverage of what people are doing in Afghanistan, trying to stand up to the Taliban. And the greatest example of that is happening in the Panjshir Valley in Afghanistan. Welcome, Ali, to the program. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So tell me what's going on. Tell us the truth about that there are people that are resisting, and it's working in many cases.
So you have freedom fighters in northern Afghanistan, in the Panjshir Valley, who have launched a resistance, who are being led by Commander Ahmad Massoud, the son of the late Ahmad Shah Massoud, who was assassinated 2 days before 9/11, who has been resisting the Taliban for the past few weeks. The Taliban have been unable to defeat these forces. We're determined to resist and to fight these terrorists, this criminal syndicate, until we're able to bring freedom to every single citizen of Afghanistan.
So can we back up for just a second? Because I have heard Ahmad Shah Massoud, his name brought up in reverence when I talk to people from Afghanistan. I don't really know his story, and I don't know why he was killed before 9/11, but I know now his son is leading the charge. Tell me the significance and the history that Americans should know about that. Who is he, who was he, and who's his son?
Well, the late Commander Ahmad Shah Massoud, he started his struggle in the late 1970s against the Soviet Union, against Soviet aggression and communism. So he was an ally of the United States from the late 1970s. And then in the 1980s, he fought against the Soviets. In the 1990s, he started his struggle against international terrorism, against the Taliban and their international terrorist friends or allies. And he was assassinated by Al-Qaeda 2 days before 9/11. The two events, 9/9/2001 and 9/11/2001, are interconnected. 9/11 wouldn't have been possible if he was alive, because he was fighting the Taliban and Al-Qaeda throughout the 5 years from 1995, 1996 up to 2001 when he was assassinated.
And how old was his son when his dad died?
Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Yes.
I didn't.
How old was his son, who's now taking his place? How old was his son when his dad died?
His Commander Ahmad Massoud, his son, was only 12 years old when he lost his father.
And so now he is fighting against the Taliban just like his father. And tell me what the progress is and what they're doing.
So fortunately, the Taliban have not been able to take over the strategic areas of Panjshir. So we control more than 65% of Panjshir province. We control parts of other districts that neighbor Panjshir. Our forces are well equipped. We have remnants of the special forces trained by the United States that are fighting alongside our local resistance forces. So right now, we are in a good position. We will be seeing more advances in the next few weeks or so. The Taliban are experiencing infighting. They are experiencing a rift within their group.
Yeah, big time.
But we're determined to fight for democracy, fight for freedom, for fighting for the rights of every woman and man inside Afghanistan. We're the last remaining U.S. ally in the country. However, we feel abandoned. We feel all alone because we're fighting international terrorism today. Al-Qaeda is much stronger compared to 2001. However, we're seeing the world abandon this global war on terror. We're left alone inside Afghanistan to fight the global war on terror because Al-Qaeda is fighting against us. There were more than 500 Arab fighters more than a week ago that attacked us. And I've put up the videos on social media where you have Arab-speaking fighters coming from Iraq and Syria saying we're going to the front in Panjshir to fight these infidels. So this isn't a civil war. We're fighting international terrorism. You have the reemergence of Al Qaeda inside Afghanistan at the moment. They are allied with the Taliban. The Taliban, which is a terrorist group, which is a criminal syndicate, they're helping these terrorist groups reemerge. And this is the reality, that after 20 years of 9/11 happening and U.S. involvement inside Afghanistan, now we're seeing the country being abandoned, and the Taliban and these other terrorist groups hijacking our country. We have to do something.
How do you feel when you see people in the West and our leadership say, we went over there, we spent 20 years, and the people just don't want freedom, and so that's just the way it is? How do you feel when you see that?
Let me give you an example. A week ago, our leader, His Excellency Ahmad Massoud, he recorded a message to the nation. He put it up. Within 2 hours, we had mass protests in Kabul, in Herat, and Mazar, the major cities, and even in rural Afghanistan. He called upon the people to rise up against the Taliban. So this shows the people of Afghanistan want freedom, because since August 15th, especially for the past 10 days, that Commander Ahmad Massoud has called upon the people to rise up against the Taliban, we're seeing everyone, women, men, old and young, rise up and express that they want freedom. So this is completely wrong when people say, no, the people of Afghanistan wanted a regime like the Taliban. No, look, today everyone is rallying and protesting for freedom, for their rights, for democracy. And today, the legitimacy that we've shown, and within a week, in 2 days, to be more specific, the Taliban were unable to show it in 2 decades, because the Taliban did the same. They would record messages calling upon the people of Afghanistan to rise up against the government in Kabul and against NATO forces. But the people never said yes. They never followed the orders of the Taliban. But our leader, he says, go protest, go rise up against the Taliban. Within a few hours, you see the masses mobilized, and within Afghanistan and outside of Afghanistan, they started their protests in favor of the National Resistance Front and in favor of freedom, independence, and democracy inside the country.
We're talking to the head of foreign relations of the National Resistance Front in Afghanistan about what's really going on there. When you hear people say here in America, you got to stand up and protest, it doesn't really mean an awful lot here in America, because we've had that right forever. We're losing it, but we've had that right forever. But there, with the Taliban, that can mean, especially if you're a woman, a death sentence, a prison sentence, a beating, rape. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're completely right, because of the risks. Just look at the photos. So in the protests, the Taliban have beaten women. They've shot women, and there's pictures of them pointing their guns towards women. So there's a lot of risks when people come out in these Taliban-controlled areas to protest, to endorse and support the National Resistance Front. But the people want to do this because they want their freedom. They don't want to give up their freedom. These people are freedom-loving individuals that will not allow any oppression, any sort of oppression, to come upon them. And unfortunately, right now, that oppression is coming with arms and munitions funded by American taxpayer money, because basically everything was left for them. And all of this weaponry, all of these equipment that were purchased by American taxpayers today is in the hands of the Taliban, killing women, killing democratic forces, fighting against the last remaining U.S. ally, which is the National Resistance Front, led by Mr. Ahmad Massoud. So this is the irony.
may I ask you for either a confirmation or a clarification? Our government says there are two Talibans. There's the old Taliban and the new Taliban, and we're hoping the new Taliban's going to be great. It's from my understanding from sources on the ground, there are two Talibans. There's the old Taliban, which is exactly like it was, and then there's a new Taliban that is even more extreme and even more dangerous. Is that true or not?
Of course. You have the old guard that have the same mentality as before, which there is a minority now. They haven't changed. But the new Taliban, it's a new brand of the Taliban. It's much more radical in their ideology. And they